Hello again and welcome to the ZiaWoolz podcast. My name is Doc and I am coming to you from Albuquerque in New Mexico. This is a podcast where I talk about knitting, crochet, spinning, all kinds of different fiber arts, whatever I've been up to in the last weeks, which in this case was a lot longer than I intended. Goodness, yes, what a summer. It's been a crazy whirlwind of activities. We have spent about roughly 4 weeks in Germany, stayed at my mom's house. You know, most of you will know that I lost my mom last year, and so there's still a lot to sort out. And my brother and I, we will keep the house, but still, as you can imagine, there's always a lot to do and a lot to take care of. So we spent time with that. We had a short vacation in Paris. My husband, my daughter, and I spent a few days there. My son participated in a piano festival, which was a great success. And so I saw him perform there, and yeah, it was altogether a good time in Germany. I met a fellow yarny and podcaster and some other knitting friends, and while we were over there, just because it worked out with the drive to the piano festival, which was fun. And then the craziness began because we were home for just about an hour and a week. I mean, it felt like an hour, honestly. And then we had to pack our bags again. Reason being that 2 years ago, we wanted to go on a cruise, but that was the beginning of the pandemic. So we had to cancel, but within this year we had to take that cruise or we would lose it. And it was a cruise with our daughter, and so this is what we decided to fit into the summer break, into her summer break, a cruise. And the one that we found that we all thought would be great was one to Alaska, which we have done a few years ago, but everybody loved it, and so we knew it would be fun doing that again. And we also decided that we would spend an extra week in Alaska we went to Fairbanks, we spent a few days in Anchorage and saw the local sites, took a train to Seward, then a small town from where the cruise ship takes off. So all in all, busy. We got back from the Alaska trip, and yes, in one day, literally less than 24 hours, we did pack up again. Yes, I know, it's totally insane because we had to take our daughter to move into her new digs at her sorority house in San Diego in college. And she uses one of our cars, which was here, of course, over the summer. And so we brought her back, and then my husband and I flew back. Not after a super fun visit with my friend Debbie, but also more craziness because my husband had contracted this super bad bronchitis, and he had to see a doctor at an urgent care place. And now fortunately by now he's on the mends because they put him on antibiotics, as was to be expected. So this is kind of like the short version of my crazy summer, and I will put some short footage at the very end for you to see. I hope you're going to enjoy that. Yes, where to start? Let's start with the elephant in the room. one of the elephants in the room. I am wearing the sweater that I showed you last time. I have knitted this with Queensland United. It's a blend of cotton and merino. And I had purchased some remnant skeins, balls they are, at my yarn store when they were on sale. I thought I was going to make some crochet bracelets for my daughter and her last year's roommates, but then I lost my esteem for that project after making just one, which turned out cute. But so I had, as you can imagine, lots of 50 grams ball that were several 50-gram balls that were just reduced to 48 grams. So they were almost full balls of yarn, and Queensland United in all of these gorgeous colors. So yes, I showed you how I started off. I did want this generous neckline. I've talked about that a lot. I like an open neckline, and because of where we are, and I used, I want to say, the rough concept, or I got inspired by an Isabel Kramer pattern. The sweater is called Il Grande Favorito, to pronounce it American. And I made that sweater a few years ago, maybe 2 or so, and the neckline is very similar, but the Isabel Kramer pattern is for that sweater. I probably had 3 yarns together, if I remember correctly. It's a very it needs a heavy weight, much heavier yarn, so that's why I say this is just inspired by that sweater. I wanted to have that gorgeous purple right by my face. And then I did the order that I thought was pleasing, and I used up pretty much all the yarns that I had. And in order to get a little bit of a sleeve, I decided I would just make thinner stripes, and I think it turned out great. I used 3.5 millimeter needles, 3 millimeters for the ribbing. And what else can I tell you about this? I think every block of color, for every block of color, I knitted 35 rounds, but on the sleeves only 17 rounds. And what I have left is, of course, a little bit more of the purple, because it didn't use up as much up here with a neck opening and everything else. That's all I have. Love it. Yep, just put it on this needle. That was my stitch holder that I had the sleeve stitches on. So I'm very pleased with how this turned out. Initially, I did want to make it shorter, and I regretted a little bit that I did not measure where it would bring me with the width of my stripes if I used all of my colors. But actually, I like the length. You probably cannot see it so well now, maybe if I hold my skirt a little bit tighter, but I think the length is just perfect. So no regrets here. And the yarn, I really liked working with it. I haven't blocked it yet, and I just saw that the bottom ribbing folds up a little bit now. But otherwise, if you look at that stitch definition, I mean, that's gorgeous without blocking. I find that quite amazing and a very enjoyable knit altogether. Another thing that I did, talking about elephants, was to make this cover for my water bottle. I literally grabbed the yarn from my cotton stash in the garage just about 10 minutes before we took off, because I thought, well, my husband's going to want to do something in San Diego. Maybe we'll walk around. I'm going to need water. I'm going to want to carry my water bottle. So I need a cover that I can carry over my shoulder, because, you know, sometimes, first of all, I am anti-wasting plastic. I just find it ridiculous how many plastic bottles are thrown away every day. I mean, I've visited places where they show what happens to animals. Okay, I don't want to get into that, but it's just a good idea to carry your own water bottle. And but to carry it like this is a little bit too much. So I decided to make this cover, and the base looks like this. And I did double crochet stitches. I kind of really just winged it. I ripped back a couple of times, but that's not really a problem when you work on something that only needs to be fitted for such a small circumference. I used a 3.5 German crochet hook, and the yarn is, I think, stunning. It's just so lovely. A 100% cotton by the company Lang, and the yarn itself, it's called a Kappa. $28.97 in case you're interested. It has a teensy weensy polyester content, 3%. And I used almost the whole ball of 50 grams for it. For some whatever not pre-planned reason, it just worked out that I did one, maybe that's called a triple crochet, I think it is. A triple crochet, and then two, what are they called? Slip stitches. I was hoping it was going to come back to me. So triple crochet, 2 slip stitches, triple crochet, and somehow magically the number was right for me, so I could have the right amount of, so I did have the right amount of stitches so that this would work out. And I just happily crocheted along until I was up here. Up here I did 2 rounds of single crochet with a round of double crochets in between to fit a, where is it? To fit a string through there to pull it tight. And the carrying, is that a handle? Yes, I think so. This I made with single crochets because I also wanted it kind of like not too loosey-goosey. I mean, it's always stretchy if you see that, you know, boing, boing. But I think the single crochet was a good decision, even though it's quite time consuming, as you can imagine, if you know how to crochet. Yes, very happy with it. However, I ended up not using it because we did not do any sightseeing because my husband was doing so. So because he just wasn't feeling up to it, and yeah. But I will use it because we love to travel, and in the future I know it's going to be more inviting to carry the bottle. At home I will, of course, then take off the bag because it's kind of more of a hassle when you drink, but I thought I'd show it to you on my water bottle. I wanted to, I told you in the last episode, and I had probably started already, that I wanted to knit an asymmetrical triangular shawl. I wanted that shawl in stockinette stitch just because life can never be easy. We need a little bit of a challenge, right? You know what I mean? So I thought I really, really want this concept of the construction of that shawl, but turn it into a stockinette project, which I could not find that online, so I made my own up. And it's kind of like, I made two birds of a feather in the last year or so. And sorry, I had to interrupt to let the cat out because I closed the door. I am yet again in our bedroom just so I can close the door and I have my peace because husband's home, son is actually home because after water damage in his house, they shut down the water, so he's with us until that is fixed. I mean, he's in Albuquerque, so all is okay. He's not so far away anyways. But to continue, I showed you the beginning of the shawl last time. I was a little bit uncertain about what yarns to use, and I decided on a set of gradient green 20-gram mini skeins, all in fingering weight, and I started with 3.5 millimeter needles, and I used the concept of the birds of a feather shawl, but turned it into a stockinette shawl. I decided I wanted a 2-stitch garter edge. Don't know why, no idea why I did that. Was not possibly the brightest idea ever, but maybe I just wanted to do it differently and try something new. But the concept of that shawl is that you start at one end, and it does not look the way I drew it here, but you start here, you do a double decrease in the center, and then you do an increase on both sides of the shawl, and you do that on the right side and on the wrong side. I was considering doing an I-cord edge, and I actually started doing that, and then it was really learning by doing trial and error that I figured out it doesn't work. And then once I thought about it, it made complete sense, because with the I-cord edge, you have one row of knitting that sits next to 2 rows of knitting. And even if you do a yarn over in between that you drop, then it's just too tight, and it doesn't really also then look pretty because the stitches are kind of like super long if you do 2 yarn overs. And when it's, then I realized, well, normally that kind of edging is used for a shawl where that is knitted in garter stitch, because that in itself is already a little bit tighter together. I mean, your knitting, if it's how can I say that best? You probably say, yeah, we know. So it just pulls together a little bit, whereas stockinette pulls apart much more. So I decided to use up a skein of my Storyteller, and that was the one that I had used for the yoke of my gorgeous yellow brick rodeo sweater that I finished last year. And this is my set of gradients, New Mexico dyer that I used. And then I had a skein of Dream in Cashmere. I don't really know. Jilly with Dream in Cashmere. So I had bought that at a pop-up shop at my yarn store, and but I wanted to use a third color, and I talked about that last time. If you saw that episode, that all of a sudden it hit me what this color had to be, and I dyed it up, and it turned out really so wonderful. So I did use up the color that I started with completely, and then this was the color that I dyed to fill in between, and this was the Dream in Cashmere singles. Is this a singles? No, this is a ZiaWoolz Sundancer in a custom dyed color, like I said. And I do not know what happened to my green leftovers. I put them somewhere and I don't know where they are, but also I forgot to look for them. So you can imagine, I did not use them all up. But now you're like, show us the shawl, show us the shawl. Yes, I will show you the shawl, because now I blocked it a few days ago. It was extremely curled up at the edges, and it was so bad that I thought, oh my God, is this even gonna lay flat when I block it? Was this a stupid decision to do it in Stockinette? I still wore it in Alaska, and but after blocking, and I laid it out and I smoothed it out, and I thought, oh my God, is this even gonna work? But it did work. Still rolls a little bit, as you may be able to see in the center behind my body, but it's really not bad. So at the beginning, this is the Storyteller yarn. And then here is where I started to alternate 2 rows of this yarn with the gradient minis. I started with the lightest green and then progressed to the darkest green down here. And at that point I had switched to the to that pink that I had dyed. And I had, oh see, I also had pulled out a brown mini skein where I thought this would complement this project and all the colors very well. And it had been a gift 3 years ago, I think. That was this brown, and it's like it so perfectly matches that colorway as well as mine, and it's just really lovely. So let me put it on. For about 5 seconds, because I did not yet turn on the AC, and I should have recorded earlier.
I'm sorry.
So here is the shawl, my design, simple, stripy, asymmetrical triangle, and very soft yarns, and I love the way it turned out. Goodness, husband keeps interrupting, but okay. One last look. I hope you like it as much as I do. And of course, my sketch was completely wrong, what I did in my notebook there, but whatever. Yes, that's the shawl, my design. I did all kinds of stuff that I figured out that I did not use a pattern for, but I hope that's okay and you're not like, wait, but I want to make that. I think this is how we learn. We think about the things that we want to do and then we just tackle them and try them, and we have these ideas, and that's how we grow. As you can imagine, I was gone for so long, and of course in Germany I visited my local yarn store that I used to visit every summer, and I found some treasures. It's always the same. I go to that store and I come inside and I see something where I'm like, oh, this takes my breath away. I want to make it, and I buy the yarn. This is the same thing that has happened many times before. So it's a store that carries nothing but Lana Grossa yarns. And I purchased these because I saw a gorgeous, very simple rectangular shawl or scarf, a very wide scarf that she had on display. And I thought, I want to make that. And I started, but I haven't gotten far yet. Even though it's fairly hefty needles in millimeters, 5.5, and I apologize, I can't remember. The lady told me 5.5 millimeters and 120 stitches. I think I remember reducing that to 100 stitches because I wanted to get more length. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm just really not sure. But I'm pretty confident that I cast on 100 stitches, and now I'm just knitting away until I used up this gorgeous first color. And in the meantime, I am dying 100 to deaths from boredom because it's plain stockinette. But the yarn is so nice. That's why I started this in no, I did not start it in Germany because I didn't have. I did. I just switched it to different needles because these are more pointy. It's my with very limited needle tips and interchangeable set that I have assembled myself. It wasn't a whole set. It did not come as a set, but I think I had 2 needles, and then occasionally I added some other tips. So the yarn is called Cetasuri, and it has, I think it is, yes, Suri alpaca and silk, 69 of the alpaca and 31 of the silk, and every little ball has 25 grams. So this is going to take me a while, but it doesn't matter. It's warm now and it will get done eventually. All things will always usually get done. So that was my German shopping project. And then for all of you local folks, we are again finally having the Albuquerque High Desert studio tour. And those of you who've known me for a long time, you will remember I have participated in that in the past. It is focused on the area where I live. There's a whole bunch of different artists who participate, and on one specific Saturday, which is December 3rd this year, if you want to mark your calendars, they open their homes and show where they work and what they create. And it is a variety of items, from pottery to rug hooking and my stuff. You know what I do, I'm a dyer and I sell my yarn, but I also have always offered like the one last hand-knit item that I do for sale, which for a, of course, totally ridiculous price that doesn't pay you for the work, but it's just an item that I've always enjoyed making, and I'm talking about fingerless mitts. I have published my fingerless mitt pattern that I came up with and that I have made probably by now, I want to say maybe 200 pairs of, and the pattern is called Duke City Mitts, and it is available as a free pattern on Ravelry. And so I got home and immediately I went hand spun yarn stash diving, but also I went to sort my spinning fibers to see what can I spin and use for those mitts, or what else do I have to use for my Duke City mitts. I manage to make about 15 to 20 pairs for the studio tour. And by the way, of course, we haven't had the studio tour for 2 years due to the pandemic, as you can imagine. So I hope everybody is as excited as I am to get that going again. And I'm going to be majorly involved in the organization this time around. Which reminds me, I didn't even tell you guys that the reason why I did not record in between the two vacations, Germany and Alaska, was that I had a major computer meltdown. It just completely crashed. It would not start again, and I had to contact Apple, and it was a giant craziness to get that going again, but we finally figured it out, and it's back to normal now. But I was just thinking of that because that's also why my email to the other artists did not go out in July as I had planned, but a whole month later right now. Yeah, because even though I wrote that email and I sent it and it showed it in my sent folder on my computer, nobody received it. But okay, you don't want to know about that. You want to know about the Duke City mitts, and it's a very simple pattern that, of course, you can modify to your liking. You can make a longer cuff, you can make a ribbed cuff or a ribbed edging here or on the thumbs. I usually don't do that. This yarn I felt wanted to roll quite a bit at the edge, and that's why I added the pearl ridge up here. I used 3.5 millimeter needles and DPNs, and this pair would be too tight for me. It's a slimmer version, and it is Araucania yarn. I already put the label in my knitting notebook. It's a 100% wool yarn, and usually I keep track when I do the mitts for the studio tour. I do it like this. I do the needles, the stitch count, and the rows, and whatever else I want to keep track of, and I put a sample of the yarn on the side. And so that's why I do know in this case I used 39 grams of yarn for the first pair. So with 60 grams being left, I know I will be able to get another pair out of this with a bigger stitch count. I mean, for a bigger hand, just I'm gonna use more stitches essentially. And I don't know if I'm gonna do that this year, because sometimes I get a little bit tired of, I need, because I've done these so many times, I want a variety of yarns that keeps me focused and interested, and that is fun for me. So I may end up putting a label on this ball of yarn with the information of all of what I wrote in here, so I don't need to find it next year, but I have it right there, and I can already show you that I have done that in the past with this hand spun yarn. So I know how many stitches and what kind of needles I need to use to get a whole other pair out of this ball of yarn. And yes, this is where I dug into my hand spun. This was a leftover from last year. I think here I also have a little tag in there that tells me, yes, I will be fine for another pair as well. Yeah, I gathered them in this little basket. All the yarns where I thought this is going to be enough. This was a skein, the yellow. Let me put the mitts aside. This was a skein that I already wound. I think this is going to be the next pair that I'm going to cast on. This is another hand spun yarn that will knit up nicely. And I don't know why this is in there. It was a little bit of a remnant that I guess I talked about that. I recorded the German podcast yesterday, and I already talked about my friend Doris coming back to visit in September, and I hope she will record another episode with me when she's here, because we just relax a lot together. And she did. Just yesterday, we also talked on the phone, and I told her, hey, I have so much yarn, so much hand spun leftovers. And she said, oh, I have these socks that I made with your hand spun yarn, I think, that I love for at home. And I said, hey, be my guest, use up all these bits and bobs and make as many leftover hand spun socks, home socks, as you want. I will be super happy if they get used up. Yes, that's about Doris. And for my ease of working on this, of course, as you may have seen, these are all of my needles that I tend to use, even though I don't know, I may put in the 5mm ones, but I also wanted to show you how I keep my DPNs. They are always in a cup, not just in this one, but another one in my little studio where I occasionally film. And this is what I do with my needles. If you have not seen me show that before, I add an elastic which I sew together, and then I use a Sharpie to write the needle size on there, and I add a safety pin, and I usually then attach, when I work with the needles, I attach the little I use the safety pin to attach that to my project bag. And oh, so fun that I grabbed this cup to gather my needles for my current projects. This is one of the artists who made this cup, who will again participate in the studio tour with her beautiful pottery. And I already said, hey, I want to come to your house before the studio tour because I need to shop again. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. It's a tea mug, normally. So that was the hand spun for that. But then, like I said, I have also sorted and, how can I say, viewed and put out and dug into my fiber stash. Oh my God, it makes me cringe when I think of how much I have. You know, you think you see something, you buy it, it's beautiful. And then I shopped last year. No, it was longer. Maybe 2 years ago, I shopped when a local woman was destashing a lot of fibers, so the price was great. And slowly my fiber stash has grown, and I have purchased stuff also to make bats with my Strauch drum carder, stroke, I think you would pronounce it in English. And so it was kind of a good thing to pull everything out, and I now have one bin which has what I would like to spin up to use for Duke City mitts, because like I said, I enjoy using yarns that keep me interested and that are really fun to work with, which are a lot of times just really those hand spun yarns. And excuse me, makes me laugh, because on the day that we got back, I sorted through the fiber stash, pulled out all the spinning tops that I wanted to spin up. I mean, I don't, for fingerless mitts, I'm not planning to use any of the finer stuff like a yak blend or anything with bamboo, tencel, and silk, because for one, they take me longer to spin, but also then we get into a pricier range of fibers, and that's when it really is not makes no sense to sell something, like that, where the fibers already were in themselves so expensive. Okay, whatever, enough of that. So long story short, I have already dyed up more fibers. I had some white, oh darn it, now I forgot. I meant to look that up. I think the sheep breed is called Punta. And I also dyed up Shetland. All of that is still drying or being outside in the studio. I started solar dyeing. I did not do it last year. I still had I just didn't see the need to dye any more fibers, but now I've gotten back into the swing of things, and I've really enjoyed that process, specifically with the solar dyeing, because you put it on, you use our wonderful solar power. And I put the pans in the driveway. They're covered with aluminum, and I leave them for a whole day, and I'm just really sad. Yesterday we had thunderstorms and it was cloudy. This morning it was super sunny, but now it's cloudy again. So I may have to put them out another day. I'm gonna have to check the weather forecast, but I'm not complaining because we need the rain. It's monsoon season, so all is well. So like I said, I have pulled out my spinning fiber stash, and it was really hilarious because I keep a lot of the fibers in here in our bedroom by my drum carder. And so I pulled all the fibers out, sorted them, and in between my husband comes in. And he was laughing at me, and he said, "You're so happy that you're home, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, can you tell?" Yes, I am. Yeah. And I started spinning that same day. I had a wonderful audiobook also. So I turned on my audiobook, got caught up with some podcasts, and I spun up some Rambly, which is, hold on, from Nanette Wake Studio. Nanette and I met over her purchasing some of my Rambly, which is a local New Mexican fibers that I had processed. I had sent it out and turned into spinning top and then dyed it. And she kindly sent me some of her more commercially produced Rambly fibers to try. And so I dyed this up, and I think it turned out really lovely. I am guessing this is a worsted weight. And then I also had this dyed up where I unfortunately there was no label, and I am thinking it's a BFL. So that is spun. This is more of a DK weight, and this was 80 grams. Oh, here's Nanette's label. And this was 51 grams, which I weighed. I still have a little bit more, but this should be plenty for one pair of fingerless mitts. Yesterday, when I filmed the German podcast, I was already showing everybody my next spin. I showed one of the bobbins that was already completed, and I showed one cloud of fiber fluff. I could not remember for the life of me where I got that stuff from, but it was there. Maybe I got that at the D-stash that I told you about. Don't know, can't remember. It doesn't matter. It's not that important. It's a wool blend, and it's kind of like it felt a little bit rustic and looked a little bit rustic. But since yesterday, I finished spinning that second bobbin, and I plied the yarn, and if you could touch it, you could tell that it's still very damp. It's pretty. I'm just not sure if it will work for my fingerless mitts, because it turned out it wanted to be a little bit heavier than what I normally like. I usually like to make those with 4.5 millimeter needles, but I'm not sure. I think that won't work for this yarn. This may require 5 millimeter needles. I don't know. Because the yarn is so fuzzy, you don't want to use a needle that where it won't allow the yarn to bloom a little bit. I will see. I weighed this, and I have 2 skeins and a bitty skein, and altogether this was 4 ounces of fiber. Then I couldn't help myself, and I got in one of the freshly dyed up braids that I hadn't even braided yet. It was still on the drying rack, and it was that punta, and that is what I finished also today. I'm a fairly fast spinner. That blue yarn that I showed you was not a quick spin because it required a lot of pre-drafting. It was a little bit matted at times. This one, a super, super lovely spin. So that one was dyed by me. It has this dirty pale green, orangey, peachy colors and hints of yellow, as you can see. Very excited about it. It is also wet. I know that a lot of people like to have their yarns relax before they ply them. I do not ever let my yarns relax. Purposely, I should say. Sometimes you do, because when you can't finish your skein on the same day, but usually I don't do that. So this was all of my lots and lots of spinning already since we are back, and I wanted to show you next all the things that have been coming to me, more yarn purchases, and also some other lucky finds and sweet gift. But I wanted to start off with a quilt which I showed on the German podcast because one of my German friends is very much into quilting, and she said, you have to show it on the podcast, and so I did, and I'm thinking maybe some of you would like to see it too. It was a very, very lucky find of this very old vintage quilt in a great condition. The white had a few stains which pretty much came out in the wash, and I am just so happy that I have this. My great aunt had a quilt similar to this, which my cousin kept, and I was always sad that I didn't have one that she made, and now I have one that I will treasure that another lady made. I feel like the lady that I bought it from at the yard sale, I think she said that she got it from her grandma, but she herself was also older. She was probably, I want to say, in her around 70 maybe, or late 60s. So yeah, this has seen seen some years pass. Yeah, and now it will be treasured by me, by us. So let me rearrange a little bit, bring this closer. You're gonna say, hey, you've been in Alaska. Did you buy Kiviot? No, I did not buy Kiviot. I have purchased Kiviot. Last time I was there, we visited a place where we saw Kiviot, and I plucked a little bit of fuzz from a fence. No, it was on the floor actually, but I don't even know. I think it's in one of my jackets still. I just remember that. But I thought I'd pull out, when I got back, I thought I have to pull out that Kiviot that I bought last time, because you cannot buy more Kiviot when you have not knitted your old Kiviot up, which is not that old, 4 years, but still, I should use it up. And this is what I purchased last time. Yes. And a lot of the 100% Kiviot is in natural colors or like more muted colors. I did want something bright because that's just what I love. That's me. And so I bought this, which was only available with a high silk content. So this is each one of these tiny guys has 50-50 merino and silk. And as I got them out of their box with the other lace yarns, this yarn caught my eye, which I had already used and actually dyed for a sweater to hold together with another yarn to get gauge. So this is a ZiaWoolz lace yarn, and I really thought that this would look great together, but this would really be a good time to work with this now that I was back to Alaska. Of course, I don't really know how much yardage I have of this. This is not a tremendous amount of yardage. So I may have to see what else I have in regards to lace yarn to combine with these two, but I'll find something. Oh, yes. Approximately 218 yards. So I have 440 And this one I will be able to figure out once I weigh that ball of yarn. So now you know why I did not buy more Kiviet. However, I did go to a yarn store called the Woolly Mammoth in Anchorage. And this is what I purchased there. These three beauties, hand dyed by a local dyer, of course, as we love to do. And I am thinking these two will be combined in a hat. I will talk about the pattern that I have in mind in a future episode. And I'm also contemplating a cowl, which I'm also going to tell you about then. Possibly we do a double cowl or something for the Duke City mitts, which would be fun, and also for this hat. Like I said, more in the next episode. And this one I was actually thinking of using in another, now I can't recall the name of the pattern. So you know that I made the Yellow Brick Rodeo sweater with that lovely yoke, but the designer Mary Annarella, she wrote another pattern where that slip stitch pattern is used for the body of the sweater, and I thought that would be so cool to use in a sweater like that. So I'm thinking I will dye up a solid color to hold, to combine with this one skein. So that's my thought for as of now. So we shall see what happens. I will keep you posted. Then I was in a super sweet yarn store in Ketchikan where we were walking around and I'm like, I've been here before. There must be a yarn store. Sure enough, it was. And I think the yarn store is called Robin's Nest. And the owner, she dyes yarn too. So I got these three that she has dyed because that's what we like to do. We like to support our dyers, and no plan yet, but I am thinking these would be lovely to be combined in possibly one nice large shawl. And I also had my daughter twist my arm. Everything I love, she doesn't like. So she said, oh, if you want to make me something, but not speckled and not fluffy or fuzzy, whatever you want to call the yarn. So it is black or white. And I must have been in a very friendly mood because I knew she was going to be gone soon enough again and going to being back in San Diego. And that's why I agreed, because I always tell her black and white, they're not colors. You know, when I offer her, pick a color, black maybe or white. I'm like, nope, that's no colors. Another purchase that I made, I think that was in Seward, Alaska. I got some yardage to make project bags. Isn't that pretty? I'll show you without the tag. It's just so lovely. Nice fabrics. I don't know, if you're like me, I like to see these things. What do people bring? What are your souvenirs? Do you have a magnet for your fridge, or do you bring things that you want to work with that to make your hobby a little bit more colorful, or yeah. Last but not least, I want to show you, before I show you something that I forgot. earlier, I want to show you this absolutely wonderful gift that came to me from all the way from New Zealand. And this is yarn that was dyed by my friend Marina of the Strawberry Patches podcast. Her yarn is called, wait a minute, is it just, now I gotta look, but I think it's just Strawberry Patches and not, no, it's Strawberry Patches yarns. So she sent me this beautiful, I think it's a DK weight yarn from New Zealand merino sheep, and it is as soft as a cloud. And as you can tell with all the yarns that I brought from our trip, that is totally, that's my colors, absolutely my colors. So Marina, thank you so much again. That was so sweet and thoughtful and very observant to pick some colors that are totally my cup of tea or my skein of yarn. Thank you so much. You're the best. Mwah. Yarn, that was yarn. And then I said, I missed out to show you something that I have also started. And going back to the hand spun skeins, or me digging into my stash of hand spun yarns, I have this bin that has mainly smaller amounts and leftovers or sample spins. I went into that bin and found a few treasures that I have spun up from bats or Rolex, which I made from bats, where it's just a technique where you pull them off the drum carder a little bit differently. Those blends I have usually made with from a natural colored fibers, and I combined that with bits and bobs of colors. And so a lot of times every little skein is a tiny bit different. Like you can see here, the top one has I hope you can see that okay. The top one has more of lighter blues, where the bottom one, it may even be a darker natural color, and it has the burgundy and some yellows. It's just lovely. And when you knit with this, every stitch is a little bit different. So I found these, and I found this, which is more green. More blue and green already wound. I'm losing my light a little bit. I hope you can see this okay. Then little bobs like that. Or this. I just totally love these. One more. It's another one with more burgundy. Yes, and what do you do when you find pretty things and you think, why did I not do anything with that yet? You cast on a shawl. So I had seen, I'm usually I watch, I mean, I haven't been totally caught up with the podcasts of the past weeks, but there's a Scandinavian, a Swedish podcaster that has recently put out an episode where she shows things that she has made with her own hand spun yarns. And so she showed this one triangle, a large triangular shawl. I think she added a lace edge, and I thought that's great, and that's what I will do. So I just, spur of the moment, grabbed some 4mm needles, grabbed the first skein and started knitting. Can you see all this variation? I just think it's the prettiest thing ever. This is not necessarily a soft yarn, but I'm thinking if you have a shawl, which is like, just like a wrap up, warm me up kind of shawl, that's not gonna be a problem. And I'm right now on this ball of yarn that I already showed you, and then I'm just gonna knit it all up, and then I'm gonna move on to the next color. I did notice that sometimes you think the weight is matching what I'm working with, which is probably a heavy fingering, maybe a sport weight, but I had started a new color and it was actually too heavy, because then it gets, it becomes more like a board with the 4mm needles, and we don't want that. We want a little bit of flowiness for a nice shawl. So this I'm really enjoying right now. And I started it yesterday, and this is already where I was. It's also good TV knitting. You just increase, I started with a garter tab that I made up, and then you just have your middle stitch and yarn overs on the side, and then you have that 3-stitch garter edge and a yarn over all the increases on the right sides only. So a yarn over increase at the edge and in the middle in every row. Very happy about this. And have we come to the end? I think we have. I'm trying to remember if there was anything else, but I do not think so. So I hope you all out there are well. I hope if you had COVID, which I've heard from a lot of people in the past weeks, I hope you've recovered nicely and are doing well. And I hope to be really back into the swing of things and be back to a regular recording, and I am excited about all the things I'm doing right now. And like I've mentioned in the past, I cannot go back to Etsy. Etsy has raised their fees too much, so I am shocked sometimes when I see what I have sold there and what in the end comes back to me in terms of profit, which then is not a profit anymore. So I am struggling a little bit with that transition, because there is a lot going on. I have my friend visiting, then I'm going to have my brother and his wife visiting. Then I have the studio, and I have to dye. I want to dye yarn to have a nice stock for all the people that come to visit. Knitting is always happening in my evenings, of course, but for now, what I plan to do is really more or less promote certain things that I want to sell through Instagram. So I am on Instagram and on Ravelry as well. I am Paper Dag, and until I find somebody who can professionally help me with my website, I will promote things that I want to sell through Instagram. So I hope to see you there. And then, of course, I will see you again shortly in about 2 weeks or so to catch up again on my makings. And I hope you will continuously be well and enjoy all your knitting and your makings, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.